I want to welcome in our all-star panel on this Monday morning. We start with Donna Jackson. She is joining us from Project 21 this morning. Constitutional attorney and Newsmax contributor Amir Benno is here, and political analyst Mark Halperin is here as well. Good morning to all. Hope you had a great weekend. Thanks for waking up bright and early with us this morning. We have a lot to talk about. It was a very busy weekend. I'd like to start with infrastructure. This is something that we were going to talk about on Friday, but everything happened in the UK with Prince Philip, and we sort of had to shift our attention, as we should have, to what was going on there. But yesterday, for the first time, Jennifer Granholm, who's the Energy Secretary, she was out touting the merits of this bill. Take a listen.
We don't want to use past definitions of infrastructure when we are moving into the future. And by the way, when other countries are investing significantly in their infrastructure to overcome us. Research and development, that's also part of a manufacturing infrastructure.
All right, and Nancy Pelosi was talking about how much this bill is going to do for roads and bridges. Take a listen.
The public understands that the worst and most expensive maintenance is no maintenance, and we have to maintain our roads, our bridges, our mass transit. We have to upgrade our water systems. We have to build out our broadband for distance learning and telemedicine and the rest of that. So we have a big responsibility. We have a big need to tune up trillions of dollars, according to the American Society of Civil Engineers.
All right, Mark Halperin, political analyst, I want to start with you here. The president is going to meet with lawmakers apparently at some point this week from both sides of the aisle to talk about this bill. Unfortunately, right now, a little over 5% of the bill goes towards roads and bridges. The rest is all part of that liberal wish list. Very little goes to repairing the infrastructure in this country.
Rob, you are an old fuddy-duddy. Your definition of infrastructure is mired in the 20th century.
Right.
This is a new time. Democrats want to spend a lot of money on things. They've come up with a way to call it all infrastructure, to put it in one legislative vehicle, maybe two. And Republicans, I think, are going to have to figure out what to do beyond just saying this is an infrastructure, because Democrats right now look like they have the votes to ram this through. And the president's going to try, I think, pretend to try for bipartisanship, but I don't think that's in the cards. This is going to be a Democratic spending and taxing bill, and Republicans are going to have to figure out how to talk about it, I think, in a way that makes popular ways to spend money seem like a bad idea.
All right, Mark, I knew you were going to say that, so I had this tweet waiting for you on Friday. It's Kirsten Gillibrand, senator from New York. She's talking about how everything is infrastructure. If your business can't run without broadband, that's infrastructure. If your goods can't be shipped without roads, that's infrastructure. If your employees can't work because there's no one else to care for kids and sick loved ones, that's infrastructure. She basically is talking about things that really aren't physical infrastructure, and she's turning them into infrastructure. And I mean, you can go anywhere with that, Amir, and say that bookshelf behind you, because it is part of your at-home studio, that's infrastructure as well.
Yeah. Well, listen, in law school, they tell you, you put a sign that says horse on a cow.
Right.
That doesn't make the cow a horse, but that's what the Democrats are doing. They're just changing the labels. They change the labels all the time. A man becomes a woman. COVID relief is really not for COVID relief. Infrastructure, when only 5% goes to roads, bridges, and highways, that becomes infrastructure, whether it's affordable housing or child care or home health care. This is really a social welfare bill. This is a social welfare bill. This is a bailout for unions. This is giving money to Democrat constituencies and environmental lobby. I mean, they're decarbonizing the electric grid. This is really a wish list, like you said. It really has nothing to do with infrastructure. But if they keep calling it infrastructure, people will believe that it's infrastructure.
Yeah, walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, must be infrastructure. Over the weekend, everyone was making a big deal, Donna, of Jeff Bezos, who founded Amazon. He apparently is in support of the corporate tax hike that's in this bill, all the way up to 28%, and he supports the bill wholeheartedly. And I'm like, thinking to myself, yeah, he runs Amazon, and his trucks use roads, bridges, and airplanes and airports every single day. Of course, the founder of Amazon is going to support this bill.
Oh, no, he's not for it. He has to say he's for it, just like every other CEO, because they're afraid of what the Democrats will do to them and how they'll punish them if they don't say it. You know, what's really troubling about this infrastructure bill is how they're using Black people to push the Green New Deal policies through. They're pushing for more public transportation when we know that their own science said that Black people attracted a higher COVID rate because they use public transportation. They're pushing these charging stations in Black communities where it's more pressing issues that Black people need, like better education, like lower crime rates. But they're hiding behind Black people and using this environmental justice label to push through an agenda that they've never asked Black people if that's what they need. You know, even Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson said that they're against these Green New Deal measures because it penalizes Black people with higher energy rates that they can't afford.
And it's $2.25 trillion. All right, I'm going to play a soundbite from Secretary Pete Buttigieg was out yesterday on the Sunday shows talking about vaccine passports and how the federal government, at least Joe Biden and the administration, are not going to make that a federal requirement. But, and there's a big but, take a listen.
We don't view this as the role of the government to create or mandate any kind of vaccine passport, but these technologies are there. Private sector is working on them, and we're interested in following that and providing any kind of technical advice or support where needed. Ultimately, the bottom line is things like the CDC guidelines, and then airlines can decide over and above that what they think is right to protect their passengers, to protect their workers, and to build up that confidence in the safety of American travel.
Mark, I think vaccine passports are coming, whether the American people like it or not. The difference is, just like we've seen over the last 13 plus months with the coronavirus, it might depend who your governor is. Roy Cooper in North Carolina, Democrat, says yes, there will be vaccine passports. Andrew Cuomo has hinted at something very similar, but Ron DeSantis says absolutely not. Greg Abbott down in Texas says absolutely not. So it might be that simple.
Well, we all need to be vigilant and make sure the federal government doesn't change its view. Right now, I don't think there is any chance of a federal passport. But you're right. The states can decide. I think the private sector can decide. And I think that's in the best tradition of America, to devolve power as much as possible, first down to the states from Washington, and as much to the private sector as possible. And if consumers don't want to go to businesses or live in states where this is required, they have the freedom to do otherwise.
Amir Benno, constitutional attorney, it's not up to the president whether or not to add seats to the Supreme Court. That would be something that Congress would have to decide. But the president has formed a 36-member bipartisan commission that's going to look at expanding the court and possibly implementing 18-year term limits on Supreme Court justices. I had to look it up because I was wondering how long we've had 9. We've had 9 since just after the Civil War. 1869 is how long we've had 9 justices. What's the administration trying to do here?
Well, I think on one hand, they're trying, Rob, to throw a bone to the progressives. On the other hand, why create a commission unless you think that something is broken? And don't forget, back in October, Joe Biden, in an interview on 60 Minutes, said that the Supreme Court was out of whack. Well, what was out of whack? All that was out of whack was the nomination of Amy Coney Barrett after the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. That's what made it out of whack. 200 federal judges appointed by Donald Trump. That's what makes it, to the Democrats, out of whack. So suddenly they constitute this commission, which is just filled with liberals. You've got law school professors like Lawrence Tribe. You've got real liberal wonky types like from the Brennan Center for Justice at NYU Law School, who are going to weigh in not just on term limits. They want, I think, 18-year terms, which, by the way, I think is unconstitutional because the Constitution says that Supreme Court judges, they serve during periods of good behavior. They don't serve during 18-year stretches. So I don't know that this can be done legislatively, although you are correct that the number of judges on the court is something that is set by Congress, not by the president, and can be changed and has been changed in the past.
I've got former acting Attorney General Matthew Whitaker coming on the show a little bit later this morning. A lot to talk about with that issue. By the way, Mark Halperin, a total aside here, but are the Red Sox of Boston a good baseball team all of a sudden?
They've gone from worst to first, Rob. They're the longest winning streak in the major leagues. And if you're a member of Red Sox Nation, it was a very, very, very good weekend.
They've won 6 in a row now. And at 8 in the morning on Sunday, I checked my cell phone, and Mark Halperin has invited me to join Clubhouse. I had no idea what it was. He then sent me an instructional article about what Clubhouse is, and I did join. So looking forward to doing whatever we do in Clubhouse.
Welcome
Mark.
aboard.
Yes, thank you. Good to be with you, Senator. It's going to be a lot of fun. All right, panel, we'll see you guys again at the top of the hour.